Good evening, everyone, and welcome to In the Know with Kat Bobineau. Today, my extra special guest is Dr. Berry, and Dr. Berry has so many things that she has accomplished. I'm only going to read the first part. Dr. Carlotta Berry is a professor in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at Rose-Hulman Institute of Technology and the Dr. Lawrence J. Might say this wrong, Giacoletto Endowed Chair for Electrical and Computer Engineering. Dr. Berry is the first Black woman to earn tenure, full professorship, and endowed chairship at Rose-Hulman with that PhD from Vanderbilt, robotics, engineering, technology. Oh my goodness, you are amazing. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I mean, you have so many things, and I ran across you in a book actually. And
Really?
yes, it was a book. It was a cartoon book basically that was
Okay.
about Black people in STEM that we should know, some from past, some current. And that's how I saw you. And then I looked you up, I sent you a message, and you actually responded. And I was like, oh, okay, this is awesome. So, yes. So, anyway, I'm going to give the mic to you. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Absolutely. So, a little bit of my intro, which you already shared, is I have been an engineering professor for about 200 years. 200 years, Lord, it feels like 200 years, for about 20 years. And it's kind of a big deal only because there are not a lot of Black women engineering professors. In the United States, there's probably only about 200. And even if you're thinking about Black women in general in all fields with PhDs, it's probably less than 5%. So it's very
Mm.
rare in order to see engineering professors who are Black women. And that was a big part of why I wanted to become an engineering professor, because as a student at Georgia Tech, I very rarely saw professors who looked like me, women or Black. And that would have been fine, except I wanted to have an experience where I felt like my professors really valued me and really knew my name, appreciated while I was
Mhm.
there, could recognize my struggle, etc. And so that's actually when I decided to become an engineering professor, because I wanted to change the face of the profession. Because I meet so many people in my daily walk who are like, oh my God, I was going to be an engineer until I hit that first calculus class, or I was going to be an, or until I got to chemistry, or until I got to physics. And so I just really think the theme for my company is my STEM is for the streets, is we need to bring STEM back to the streets so people can know it's for them. They are meant to be there. And there is no one set way for it to look. So you ain't a calculus person, you ain't a physics person, does not mean you should not be an engineer. We need to make it look more relatable, like the streets, right? And so that's really a big part of what I try to do with my social media, is sharing these things with people who may or may not understand it so that they can recognize, hey, that person's like me.
Mhm. Oh my goodness, I love it. We gonna be besties after this because that's
Oh,
exactly
thank
how I
you. Thank
am.
you.
STEM for the streets. I love that. We tend to go into these spaces where there's not a lot of us, there's not a lot of people doing the things that we're doing, and
Mhm.
we're trying to give back. We're trying to
Yeah.
bring up the younger people and the next generation. And I don't know about you, but sometimes it feels like your hand is getting slapped because people don't understand what you're doing,
They
right?
don't. They don't. And we
Mhm.
now know that some of these things that we do, which are extremely important, are becoming curse words. Diversity, equity,
Yeah.
inclusion, and justice in STEM is an absolute must. And so, when you hear people talking about things like that, and it's obvious they don't know what any of that means. And what we're saying is that we have to help people to get a foot in the door, because multidisciplinary, diverse teams design the best solutions to problems that are going to improve our world. And when you have uniform teams of white males, what you end up with is AI that doesn't recognize Black and brown skin, or you end up with chat bots that don't recognize people with accents, voices, or female voices. So we know what happens when you get solutions to problems where everybody in the room is going, hey, that looks good, but nobody in there looks any different than anybody else. And it's not just diversity of racial and gender, it's diversity of thought, diversity of socioeconomic background. All of those things are important, because when you have a uniform way of thinking, how are you going to come up with some creative solutions to anything?
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've sat into classes and gone on programs, and there are people of multidisciplinaries doing the exact same thing, the exact classes, but seeing it in a different way. It's kind of like all of us, four people can see a car
Mhm.
accident, but four people are going to see four different angles or four different views. And so if you don't have that diversity in the room, that diversity of thought, like you said, you're going to get just this
Yes.
one singular thought, this one singular product, instead of a
Yes.
product that can be utilized by more people.
And a lot of times the best solution is when you put things together, right? So those three or four people with those really crazy, diverse ideas, when they all come together, probably are going to make a better solution than having that one singular mindset or the loudest voice in the room. Everybody just does what they say, and you're like, oh, whatever. They really invested in their ideas, so just let them roll with it. But you don't
Right.
know that thing that you're holding in may be the thing that really would have taken that over the edge and made it better.
Absolutely. I mean, I've often said there probably is a cure for cancer, but it's in the mind of someone who couldn't go to medical school or couldn't get a PhD in some sort of biological science, but
I'm telling you, you see
they
it. You
look
see
outside the box.
And if you look on TikTok, you'll see a lot of inventions from kids in Africa. There was one I saw the other day where they were making fuel out of like vegetable oil or something like that. These kids don't even have engineering degrees yet, and they're coming up with these most creative. There was another one where he was like powering half the village and with something like, and they had televisions and all kind of stuff with no electricity grid. But
Yeah,
you know what they say, necessity is the mother of invention. So when you need these things, you don't have to have an engineering degree. You're going to figure it out.
absolutely. I think I've seen something similar, but it was a TED Talk, and it was a young man from Africa who had did I think they had the lions were coming and attacking their livestock, and so he did a grid with the lights would come on,
Hmm.
motion sensor lights when lions would come, and that way they'd run off, and you have your livestock not being killed by them. And it's like this young man, probably a teenager, is doing a
Yeah,
TED talk and doing
yeah,
something
absolutely.
that we didn't even think about because, as you pointed out, it wasn't a necessity for us. It wasn't
No, we
something
got
that we,
comfortable. Yeah, I
yes,
was just looking at something the other day that talked about that inventions actually make you lazy. And one of the examples they gave is cell phones. Since the advent
hmm
of cell phones, which we absolutely love, how many people's phone numbers do you actually have memorized anymore? You
that
lose your
part.
phone, maybe your mama, my mother, and my best friend. That's it. I'm not gonna know anybody else's phone number. But so
Yep.
it's kind of like these inventions also do make you a little lazy, but they're a convenience. You're not going to give it back. Nobody would go back to actually using paper maps to navigate, right? Everyone uses GPS now. So it's important. But also you have to think about always, what can I be doing to improve the world just because I now have this convenience that I did not have before?
Absolutely. I saw it was an article, it was a couple of years ago, and it was no, they had did a study on people using GPS but already knew where they were going, and GPS is taking them a roundabout
Yeah.
way even though
Yeah.
they knew you can go this direction. And because of that, people were going a roundabout way even though they knew it was
Yeah.
wrong. They still followed GPS because that was something that's now been ingrained in us. We're going to follow
I've
GPS
talked
wherever it's
myself out of that. I've done the same thing where I was like, okay, I thought this place was here, but the GPS is sending me this way. And I was like, oh, well, maybe I just remembered wrong and I went to the wrong place. And I was right the
at.
whole time because I'm just like, I just knew the GPS was right and I ended up at the wrong place. So you're exactly right. I had convinced myself and I had become over reliant on this technology. The questions I get a lot because I do AI and robotics is how much to now trust, self-driving cars AI
Mm,
and thinking about Teslas and all that. And I said, because I'm in that field, maybe I am a little bit more doubtful because I do know where the technology is. I know there's a lot of bias, especially people's protected classes, Black and brown people, women, etc. So because of that, I would never get an autonomous car and put it on drive and lay down and take a nap. We've seen people
mm.
doing that and getting in car accidents and people being killed because the technology is just not there yet. Those cars right now have been known to hit billboards hit the side of a truck because it thought it was a billboard, or mistaken a small child in the crosswalk for a dog, things like that. Because I know those things are happening, I'm never going to blindly trust that. I know that technology is not there yet. So it may be coming someday, but that's right now why I would not absolutely blindly trust any type of AI or robotics. There's just way too many papers written on the bias and the things that go wrong.
Absolutely. And I'm here in California. I'm in Oakland, which is right across the bridge from San Francisco. When I'm in San Francisco, I see those autonomous cars all the time, just riding through. And I'm just like, yeah, no,
Not
I'm
there
not,
yet. Not there yet.
I'm not
I'm okay
comfortable.
with the Google car making the map, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
not okay with too many of them on the road with me when we know that a lot
Yeah.
of the decision making is still based upon sensors. Sensors still have error.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously any software developed is in the mind of also a programmer, unless it's doing some kind of machine learning. And so we don't know if there's errors in that code that they made that they weren't thinking about when they made them. So you cannot just completely. The only thing I do find a little cute, and they don't have it here in Indiana, is those little food delivery robots. Now them little buddies
Mm-hmm.
are cute. I would love to have some of those, but we've even got videos of those getting stuck on the curb cut, and
Yep.
those getting stuck to each other, and people walking down the street having to pull them apart so they can go on to their delivery. So we've even seen errors with those as well.
I mean, I've seen them on UC Berkeley's campus, but here is my bias, right? I can walk or drive faster than that robot, and my food is going to be cold by the time that robot gets to me. So I'd rather walk or drive and get my food than deal with a robot. You know,
Yeah, they may never
that's
get
my
there.
bias. Yeah,
It may
because then
never
you might
get
get
there.
stuck. Right, you might get stuck. I might be an hour. I could have walked. I could have
Mhm.
went and got my food. I'm not doing that. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, I've seen them.
if no nice stranger helps get it unstuck from the sidewalk, your food's never gonna show up.
Exactly, exactly. So yeah, I walk right past those things and go straight into the restaurant, eat. Like, nah, I'm okay. I don't want to deal with that, you
That's
know.
so
But
funny. Yeah.
what I've seen online, but I haven't seen in person are the robots that are cooking the food, like burger places, things like that. Like I've seen them online, but I have not seen that in person. I don't know if those exist. I'm sure they exist somewhere in the United
Some of
States.
them are also tell our remote control virtually. So, sometimes a research lab is testing out some of that stuff, because I saw one time that I thought was really, really cool. And then as I kept reading, I saw that they were actually off screen somewhere, remotely controlling
Mm,
it and basically trying to show what their vision was, but it wasn't quite there yet. Now, I have gone to restaurants and had robotic waitresses before.
mm,
But obviously there's somebody in the kitchen who's putting the food on there, and then the waitress just knows where to take it to. I've had one where you had to take the food off the waitress, and one where the waitress put it on the table. So
mm.
that was really cool. But I've never seen the cooking one yet where I know for sure that that thing is actually working correctly. And it's not actually a person somewhere, like the Wizard of Oz behind the
Right.
curtain, really making it happen.
Exactly. Yeah. No, I the only thing that I've seen in person is the kiosk when you can order your food from a kiosk, but it drives me insane because I see you right there. There's a register. I see a person standing next to the register, but they're
Mhm.
pointing to the kiosk and I'm like, "Why? Why can't I just talk to you and tell you what I want? Why do I have to punch it into a kiosk?" I don't understand that one.
And I've also noticed that they're now back, but for a while there, McDonald's had the AI drive-through where you go through the
Mm,
drive-through, you talk to it, and the AI would make your order. They had to pull them down because it was making so many mistakes and it was putting bacon on ice cream and crazy stuff like that. But I noticed that they're now back at Taco Bell. So obviously somebody has been working on the technology, because the one at Taco Bell is pretty accurate now. And I think my mind is maybe a restaurant with a limited menu, it probably can do a little better because it's probably not going to mishear you as often. But when you got
right.
50 bajillion things on the menu, the AI is going to give you some crazy stuff. But yeah, I hate that it's coming, but I will say, even when you do that there's also a human being back there who will correct for that. I'm
Right.
not sure we're at that place yet where you're going to see a fully automated drive through, so that when it mishears you, ain't nobody in there to be like, okay, I'm not gonna put bacon on your ice cream cone.
Right.
So
Well, I often, so like my 9 to 5 is actually at a nonprofit that deals with people coming out of the prison system. And we
mhm,
often talk to them about like jobs they can do or businesses they can start. And I always reference the movie Wall-E. And they're like, if you've
yeah,
ever seen Wall-E, that's the direction we're going, As if you can make somebody's life easier, they will
yes,
pay you to do it. So figure out some way to make someone's life
mhm,
easier. Somebody is going to pay you to do it. And I see it time and time again. I'm just like,
mhm,
but we got to get outside. We got to eat healthy. We got to work out. Otherwise, we truly will be the humans in Wall-E, like sitting in a chair, never really moving, and even having robots raising our kids and television raising
mhm.
our kids. And I'm just like, yeah, I'm not feeling that, but I can see it coming. I could definitely see it coming.
Absolutely. Well, I get asked a lot about robots taking people's jobs, and you think most in manufacturing. I worked at a Ford Motor Company, and then I worked at Detroit Edison before I got my PhD. And what I like to tell people is a lot of times the jobs that robots are going to do are things that are repetitive, things that are going to go very quickly. And that's something you necessarily don't want a human being doing all day, because they could get carpal tunnel, and it's not
Hmm.
ergonomically healthy for them to do that. So what you really want to tell these people is, if the robot can do that job, that's probably not something you wanted to be doing anyway. So a better use of your time is, let's elevate you to becoming a technician that actually controls the robot, helps manage the robot, looks at the inner, because you're now becoming more skilled, getting more skills for your job. And I'm not saying the robot's going to take your job, it's going to elevate what you do. But part of that elevating, like you said, is not becoming lazy, but learning something you didn't know before. So that you now managing that team of robots, as opposed to being a robot sitting there sticking a widget into a hole all day to make a car door,
Hmm.
right? Because that's not good work for you either.
Yeah, I went to a conference, I think almost 2 years ago now. And that's when I actually was introduced to ChatGPT. And they said
Mhm.
something along that lines is, people are fearful of AI. They're fearful of ChatGPT because it's really still brand new. Not everybody was using it, but it was like, oh, ChatGPT is going to take jobs from writers, from artists, from things like that. And it's like, yeah, ChatGPT or any AI can do certain things, but if you learn the prompts, if you learn how to manage the back door of it or whatever, you're still gonna have a job. And like
Yeah,
ChatGPT can write some things, but if you take the time to read it, a good portion
yeah,
of the time it's not accurate, or it's not really in the voice of a human. And so you
yeah.
can modify it, you could do other things, but what they said was, it's also similar of being fearful of like Facebook, Instagram, whatever the case. If you're one of the first ones to do it, then you become the master of it and you can make money from teaching other people how to use it. So,
And to be honest, you cannot close the barn door once the horse is out. And so faculty are
right.
also very fearful that students are now going to be using ChatGPT to cheat. Excuse me. And so what I like to tell them is that it's too late. It's here, it's not going anywhere. So a better use is for you to teach students the appropriate ways to use it and not use it. In other words, use it to check
Exactly.
your grammar, not to write your paper.
Exactly.
Give me 1 second.
No, no problem. No problem. Yeah, I've definitely seen papers and things like that being written. I mean, I've even used it to write emails and stuff like that, but also go over it. Like there's certain things and certain phrases that will obviously tell you it's been written by AI. And then, yes, you still got to put your spin on it, your words, like
Yeah.
what you're trying to convey, and then let ChatGPT kind of fix it up,
Another
pretty
big
it up.
one is students not knowing how to write appropriate emails to their professors. I've gotten some of them. And I go and say, put this email in ChatGPT and rewrite it to show how it should be a professionally addressed to your professor, and send it back to the student and be like, you should not be writing your professor saying my first name. You should not be
Hmm.
having curse words in emails to me, because I'm not your little friend from the park. So you need to address me as your professor, not your homeboy.
Mm. Yeah, we need more professors like that. I mean, there's some, who allow it, who will see the emails and be like, "Oh yeah, you sound cool. I'm gonna let this fly." And I'm not like that. Like I've
Me
had people
neither.
on I've had people on this podcast and even in person that I've met that have gotten a PhD or MD, and I prefer them as doctor. And they're like, oh no, call me such and such. I'm like, no, you work too hard to get a PhD or MD. I'm not calling you that. You are a doctor in my book, So I'm going to put respect on your name because you
I'm
did the
okay
work
with
to get
colleagues.
it.
Like you
Right.
calling me Carlotta, I would be fine with. But I do not let students do that because I have found that when they become a little bit too comfortable with you, those lines get blurred. And then when
Mm.
you have to draw the line and be the authority figure or tell them no or correct them on something, those lines have been blurred and it becomes extremely uncomfortable. In my school, there's some departments where all the professors allow the students to call them by first names. And who that ends up hurting in particular are women and people of color. Because we are not as prevalent in those spaces, a lot of them
Mm-hmm.
have never seen an authority figure who's a Black woman. The only Black people they've ever interacted with are service workers and people like that. So it's very easy for them to slide into those other ways and those other dynamics of engaging with you. So if I lower that barrier even more by saying you can call me by my first name, then you can't be mad when one walks up to you and throws their arm over your shoulder and be like, hey, what's going on? Which
Mm-hmm.
happened to one of my female colleagues. And I told her, I said, the first thing you got to do is you need to go back and tell them to stop calling you by your first name, especially when you visually present as a little younger,
Right.
because they're now seeing you as a friend. So when they have to tell you, you're getting a D in this class and there's nothing you can do about it, they want to know why their friend can't help bump them up to a C.
Right. No, I get that. I totally understand because when I was getting my master's, of course, I was doing like student teacher work, and I was teaching a lab, and the students come in and hey, Kat, and I'm like, hey, how you doing, whatever, and people want to start telling me about their private lives, and I'm like, let me stop you right there. Like,
Yes,
I don't need
absolutely.
to know about what's going on outside of here. I really don't. Like, let's focus on this. We'll get you passing this class. And of course, you have students who want to joke around, whatever, and then all of a sudden they want to use office hours like a week before the final and say, "Oh, I need help with it." Well, where were you all semester?
Correct.
You was
It's kind of
joking
like
and
when a
playing.
student will say, I was absent. Did I miss anything important? I said, if my mouth was talking, it was important. And don't come to my office for me to reteach you what I taught in class because I've already been paid to teach that lecture. You need to go make some friends and get your notes from your friends. But similar to you, when I was in grad school, I taught somewhere, and this is before I had my PhD. So we were about the same age. I was the same age as the students. Being very casual with them, I started getting asked out. And I'm like,
Mm,
no, not appropriate. But
right.
because
No.
they had saw me at that level, they're like, oh, well, we're cool. I said, I am your professor. And they're like, so? I'm like, okay. So this
Oh,
is why I'm like, I was telling some of the junior faculty that I mentor, I said, when you get up on that stage in front of the classroom, even if it's not your true personality, you need to be a little bit of an actor or an actress, at least a little bit. I'm not saying be
mhm,
fake. Before I got tenure and full professor, I probably did code switch a little bit more than I do now. But some
mhm,
of that is important because even with me doing all that, I teach majority white males. My school is 70% white male. So even with
mhm.
doing all of that, I still had on my course evaluations, she speaks in a lot of slang and it's difficult for me to understand her. And I'm sitting here like,
Wow.
never in my life has anyone told me that. So I don't know what slang you're hearing. Right. So even when you do code switch, you don't, people will prejudge you with their prejudices and they will hear and see, regardless of what's happening, what they want to.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. You're on one end of the spectrum, you're going to be getting, oh, she speaks a lot of slang, or, she speaks
Hmm.
Ebonics. And then on the other side of the spectrum, oh, you sound white. And it's like, okay, well, which one is it? All
What
right,
do you want?
I'm just trying to
Yeah,
convey what I know, but you're telling me I sound some kind of way. No, that's your prejudice. That's not how I sound. That's just how
correct.
I'm talking to you just normally. So yes,
Mhm.
I totally understand where you're coming from. And it's a sad indication. And I can't believe a school in this day and age is 70% white male. But I mean, I
It
guess I
is.
can.
It's Indiana.
Okay,
It's
I don't say I guess
it's,
I
it's because
can.
it's because it's Indiana and it's also engineering and
Yeah.
engineering in general is only about 25% to 30% women in general. Now, if you're in California, I'm at a small engineering school that's primarily undergraduate, and probably the school in California that's closest to ours is Harvey Mudd. And the difference
Mm,
between our school and Harvey Mudd is because it's in California, although it's a similar type school, they draw from a more diverse population. So their school is 50% women. So even though it's also a small, primarily undergraduate engineering school, it's where you are. A small town in Indiana is going to draw from the community around. A lot of farmers, a lot of farm kids, a lot of students from Illinois and Indiana. And then also my school was all male until 1995. So it became co-ed in 1995. So getting to 25 to 30% women, even if it's
Yeah.
mostly white, is kind of a big deal. Like I said, like you said in the intro, I am the only Black woman professor on campus. There are 6 Black men, a few, some of them are African, but I'm the only Black woman. And but you're right. Even if I was somewhere in California, there's still not a lot of me. Right.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, so I did when I first got there, I had to do a lot of teaching them how to treat me.
Right.
Because the other thing they expect, because most of my colleagues are men, mostly white men or maybe international, is the expectation is that a woman is going to be softer, kinder, sweeter, a little bit of that mammy complex. So if I'm being firm or if I'm holding them to standards, I am seen more as, an itch, where my male colleague may be seen as, oh, he's just really rigorous or he's just a hard professor. So that's another one you have to deal with is I can treat you the same way as my colleagues, but it's seen as why is she so hard?
Right. Right. And all you're doing is asking for the same respect.
Correct.
All you're asking for is to be treated, as an equal, which, as you pointed out in the very beginning, is the idea of DEI, right? It's
Yes.
like, I
Yes.
didn't get here because I'm Black. I'm getting here because I'm an equal and you need
Yes.
to treat me as such,
And the whole
which,
purpose, yes, is that I am more than qualified for any position that I apply for. The DEI just makes sure I get an opportunity to be interviewed. And we
right,
already see right now what's happening is they have made this DEI into a curse word. And now we're getting these highly unqualified people in these positions because in their mind, qualified means white male. And now all of a sudden, mysteriously, we got planes falling out the sky. And, the stock market is crashing every 5 minutes because you've
and
got
we
highly underqualified folks running these organizations.
and you got diseases we've mostly eradicated making a comeback, and people not even knowing the diseases are making a comeback because there's no one there to tell us these diseases are making a comeback. And it's just like, how you have dysentery.
Oh, I didn't know that
Dysentery.
one was back. Is that back too?
Oh, yes. Yes, dysentery is in Oregon. And so it like really plays on the Oregon Trail name, but dysentery is happening in Oregon. And again, people don't know because the people who are there to share the information are being
Yes.
fired. And so now we have this misinformation going around because the qualified people who were doing the work are no longer there.
And also the
Whew.
tornado that went through a couple of weeks ago because they're getting rid of NOAA.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the thing is, I was better off not knowing what some of these organizations did because now that y'all getting rid of them, I gotta know. It's kind of
Yeah.
like somebody said they called him Sleepy Joe Biden. And that's because we could actually sleep at night and not have to worry about stuff like plane. I'm gonna be on 3 planes this weekend. I fly so much, it's like an afterthought to me. Now I got to actually think about getting on a plane.
Yeah. I got to get on a plane next month and I'm flying to Hawaii. And I'm just like,
Oh,
yep, I'm just saying a prayer when I get on this flight, because whew,
it's stuff we
it
never had
shouldn't
to
be
think about
scary.
before.
Yes, it shouldn't be scary as scary as it is now, is what I'll say. It
Absolutely.
shouldn't have to be
Absolutely.
that way, and like so many people are losing their lives and getting sick that don't have to. But
Children dying of measles. Measles.
yes,
Measles has
yes.
been eradicated since 2010.
I will say this though. Um, COVID showed us how gross a lot of Americans are.
Yes.
And, the average reading level in America is third grade.
Yeah.
So,
The election showed us that. And if you just pull back the cover, the number of people who Google after the election, what is a tariff? Some of the things they
I
were
almost choked.
Googling, and you're just like, baby, you Googling this on the wrong side of November 5th.
Yes. Yes.
No one,
Okay.
still saying stuff like, China pays for the tariffs. No, baby, we pay for the
No,
tariffs. Are your
we do.
eggs down? Did your gas go down? We
No,
pay for it.
in fact, it's going up. Still
Absolutely.
going up.
Absolutely.
And yeah, I'm not even gonna go there. I typically don't even want to talk about politics because people
We
get
don't
in
have
their
to.
feelings.
We can go on back over
But
into STEM, whatever you want to
mhm,
talk about.
I'm gonna reel it back in. I'm gonna really back into you. Like being the first Black woman and going into robotics engineering. I mean, let's start back from the beginning. Like, is that something you always wanted to do when you were younger, or did that kind of come to play later?
It came later. I absolutely did not. And I did a podcast one time, and somebody asked me, who was your role model? I said, to be honest, I didn't know any engineers. I didn't know any Black engineers. I didn't even know any people with PhDs. But
Mm,
if you ask me to really, really think hard about it, and I don't even know when she first came across my timeline, but Mae Jemison would have probably been the closest role model for me of a Black woman engineer. And I'm not even sure I knew who she was until after high school. I would have to really go back and figure out what year she was an astronaut to know. But so I can't say that I was trying to be the next Mae Jemison because I don't even know if I knew who she was when I was in high school.
mm,
So I was really I'm doing a presentation for a girls in STEAM event on Saturday because I talk a lot about the intersections of science, technology, engineering, math, and the arts is vital, and also medicine. I'm doing it at a medical school. So STAMM is becoming a thing as well, the arts and adding in the medicine,
mm,
because you don't want anyone who's a purely STEM person who knows nothing about ethics, about humanities, about the arts, who, if they can't make a presentation, if they can't talk to people, how are they going to sell their ideas? How are they going to get somebody to fund their ideas? If they don't know how to do anything but look at their shoes and sit in a cubicle and code, and they cannot talk to other people, how
mhm.
really good is their STEM? So I talk a lot about those intersections, and that's really what I was. So when I was little, I was really into dolls, Barbie dolls. I loved them. And I
Okay.
wanted to be a school teacher. So my favorite thing to do was play with my dolls, comb their hair, make their outfits, and teach school. So I like to say that being an engineering professor, I still ended up being a teacher. So
Mhm.
although I was really good at science and math, being anything other than a teacher never really crossed my mind. And then when I was in high school, I went to a magnet school. I had a counselor tell me to consider engineering, which was probably in the book you're referring to, which I just most recently found out about, because the person who wrote that book, I don't even know who they are. And I
Oh.
think, no. And so I think one of the scariest parts of that book for me, there are several, is how accurate it was and how much detail she had about me. But then when I stepped back and thought about it, well, most of what she had is publicly available. I just would
Mm.
have never thought somebody would write that much detail about me and me not even know about it. So
Wow,
it was
that's
it
crazy.
was it was a colleague who's a roboticist at another university who contacted me and said, I just went to the library and got this book for my daughter and you're in it. And I was like, a book and I'm in it. That's how I found out. But so the level of detail was very accurate. So just like the book said, I was in high school and somebody said, you should consider engineer. I thought train conductor. So I went to the library. I looked it up because I didn't have a cell phone. Nobody really had cell phones then.
Mm-mm.
And it said, it kind of told me what an engineer was, but not to the point where I was like, huh, I don't know, maybe, maybe not, I don't know. So that's why I got a dual degree program in Spelman and Georgia Tech. So I have the math degree from Spelman and I got the electrical engineering degree from Georgia Tech, so that at any moment it just was not working for me, I still could fall back on the math degree to become a high school math teacher, which is
Mm.
what I wanted to be. Luckily, I actually, even though my grades were not that great, I really did enjoy the content at Georgia Tech. But what I did not enjoy, like I said, was the way that I was taught,
Mm.
and the interaction, and just that the people were not cool. I feel like, why can't engineers be cool? Why can't professors be cool? Why does it have to be one or the other? Why I gotta be a
Mhm.
robot up here? I mean, it's really hard to teach people when they look at you and you look bored talking. Right. So I
Yes.
think that was a big part with me. And so me getting my PhD in teaching engineering, I still also teach math. So I'm still doing what I said I was going to do, but I absolutely was never, ever going to be an engineer. And I was never, ever going to be an engineering professor. It was the experience in college that did that. And so if I had gone to work as an engineer, which I did, and I 100% enjoyed it, I probably still wouldn't be a college professor. But what I found myself doing as a working engineer is I was spending more time with the interns. I was mentoring them, the high school students, the college students. In my free time, I was tutoring, I was teaching. And I'm like, God, you trying to tell me something. Let me go and go to grad school and get out of here. You know, so I think that's really what the key was. So no, I did not. I did not plan this at all. It was very happenstance. And one thing I've told people as well is if I had known how much bias is in this field against Black and brown people and women, I may
Mhm.
not have done it. But my ignorance about that spurred me on. And once I had gone so far down that journey, I wasn't going to stop because I had invested too much. So that's a big part of what I do now is trying to, tell young people these are the challenges, these are the resources, and this is how you overcome them. But I don't want you to go in here blind because you are going
Right.
to face some challenges, and that's all the way through. I even talk to PhD students; they still going through.
That's good though. I mean, at least you're giving them the real,
Yes.
I mean, I had a professor in undergrad and I was just like, I don't know, I like science and I like animals. And he was like, just get a PhD. You'll be fine. I was like, in what though? In what?
Yeah.
What do I do? And it was just like, whatever you want to do, a PhD. And so I think that's a part of the reason why I was real hesitant because I was like, I don't want to go to school for like 6 years and just not do the work that I really want to do. And I still want to do a PhD, but I'm like, throw me in a field somewhere with wild lions and I'll be happy. But
You can find a PhD
every
in that area. Absolutely. I don't have no idea what it's called, but I'm sure there's something out there that aligns very closely with that.
Oh no, there is. There's PhDs where
Yeah.
people are doing that work. Number one is very hard to go into. Number two,
Oh.
very white male dominated, you
Mm.
know. And if you don't know someone who's already doing something like that, yeah, you're
It's
more than
hard.
likely not going to get it because it's very few and far between. It's a lot of red tape, when you're doing some sort of
Mhm.
work with live things. And so there's a lot of red tape and a lot of things you have to go through. So it's not a lot of people who do it, but you know, even if you turn on the TV, like my love is telling people stories. And I wanted to do television. I wanted to do it in a way where I could be like, hey, I want to be like the female Bill Nye the Science Guy meets,
Yeah.
Oprah or something and telling people stories and going out in the field and recording it and saying, hey, look, you can do this because they're doing this. And the process of me trying to do that, I was often, no, not often, always told sex sells. And so
Mm.
they would want me as a woman to be like in a bikini or in a dress in a lab coat and in the lab. And I'm just like, you've never been in a lab if that's what you're telling me I should be dressed like.
Absolutely not. I tell people that all the time. I know all engineering professors are not like me, but I am a textbook engineer. Nails normally not done. Makeup
Mm-mm.
normally not done. And there are some engineering professors who are like that, but that's just not me. I don't wear
Right.
heels to work. I work in a robotics lab. I might be crawling on the floor, chasing a robot at any moment. So you're not going to see me. I don't go to work diva down. And
Right.
if that's who you are, God bless you. It's not that over here.
Exactly. And then so I mean that really put a damper on the things I wanted to do until I finally
Mhm.
was like, you know what? I don't care what y'all do or what y'all say. I'm just gonna do what I do. And so I
Absolutely.
mean that's kind of how this podcast came about. It's like I can talk to more people if I do it virtually. I can get to know more things if I do it virtually. And it's
Yes.
just like, and people want to tell their stories. People in STEM want to help the next generation. It's just we as parents too need to allow our kids to see this,
Yes.
and that's one of the platforms I used to be on before COVID. I would always go out and talk to students, but also like talk to parents like, where are you in this as a parent?
That's a big part of the
Know?
workshops I've started doing is I tell the organizers, if you can, try to get parents to come as well. Because the challenge has become if I teach kids this technology, or if I give them a robot, or if I teach them how to program it, and then they go home and they run into problems, and mom or dad is completely clueless. Mom and dad may verbally encourage
Mhm.
them to keep going, but sitting down on the floor and doing it with them, the kids are more likely to stick with it. Because I meet a lot of parents who
Right.
are like, where are you doing workshops? Where are you doing stuff? Where can I drop them off? Where can you come and help me? Because I also, like you, do a lot of virtual workshops through Black in Robotics and some through Black in Engineering, where I will ship people a robot kit and I will hop on Zoom and I will walk them through it. And I'll say, where's mom or dad? If they're available, let have them come sit with you, because then they can help you put things together, take things apart, figure out what's wrong. and you're learning and growing and developing together. But yeah, there's a lot of times where mom and dad are like, I don't know anything about this, but I'm gonna drop them off. Another thing, I write children's books, and they're all about kids and robots. And one of my challenges is also I've been places where I have the books and the robots out, and I've had a little girl, she'll come sit, she's playing with the robot, she's doing the books, and mom or dad will walk on and be like, oh, her brother will love this. Hold on, I'll be right back. And they take the little girl and bring brother back and trying to get them to stop. Okay, because
Wow.
she's engaged, she's doing stuff. Her brother's really into this stuff. Let me go get him instead. Go get both of them and bring them back, but don't take her away, you know?
Right. Oh no, I mean, and that's why I was like, we here. I got children's books too. They're based off of my
Yay.
son, and it's just like I want to encourage, and all the kids in there are kids of color, and it's just like, yeah, we got kids of color who are, doing astrophysics, geology, marine biology, and it's just like, yeah, these kids can do it, but you have to be a part of it, and that's the platform I've always said is like, hey, bring the family, bring it. And like, I
And
don't know.
even with that,
It's been a very
you will
uphill
see
battle.
that
Uphill
they will
battle.
get some valuable skill sets, whether they stay or not. I have one daughter and she's now 16, but she has been going with me to STEM and robotics events since she was a baby. So probably by 3 and 4 years old, she was already doing basic robot driving. She can program robots. She's built robots. She's been on 3 different robotics teams. But now that she's in high school, she's really into speech and debate. And she tells me she just does not want to do STEM anymore. But the good news about it is because of that exposure I gave her, she still has those math skills. She still has those programming skills. So no matter whether she goes to college to be a writer or communications or in marketing, those skill sets that she acquired,
Mhm.
you cannot take that away from her. And so I think that's also an important thing. I put her in piano when she was little, and her piano teacher said the great thing about that is piano helps improve your math skills. So even if she no longer plays the
Mhm.
piano, those math skills are not going to go away. Those are still there. So it's
Right.
things like that. The exposure is not because everybody's going to be the next Bill Nye or everyone's going to be the next Dr. Ayanna Howard, who's probably the most famous Black woman roboticist, but it's because you get some very valuable things that will help you with life so that people talk about this. I know you just said you're not talking about the third grade reading level. Engineering and STEM teaches you how to be analytical, how to troubleshoot,
Mhm.
how to question, and how to analyze. So it's about more than just you're reading at a third grade level. You also do not think critically about things that people are telling you that obvious don't make any sense because you never learned that critical thinking skill. So that's why those things are important about more than just the calculus and the physics. It's because when something sounds stupid, you need to sit back and go, something don't sound right about that.
That don't sound right. Let me look into that.
Right.
Right. No, I get it. And like my biggest thing here in the Bay Area is like parents will drop their kids off at a football camp, a basketball camp, even like arts. But let me say, oh, we're doing something science based, STEM based. It is pulling teeth to get, especially our parents, to bring their kids to these things. And I'm just like, but then about 10 years ago, when I first moved back to California and I would be out and about pre kids, and I say, oh, I'm in science, I'm a biologist. And people would be like, I've never met a Black scientist. What do you mean? There's plenty of us. You just didn't try. But I'm pretty sure a business owner, a pilot, or something, but
I'm gonna tell you what it is.
you can know
A lot
someone
of
Black.
people think their child is gonna be the next Simone Biles, LeBron James, or Michael Jordan, and
Yes.
some will.
Yes.
Some will, but they all will not. Let me tell you about the argument, because I told you we do stuff through Black in robotics, Black in engineering, but we do not restrict on race. Sometimes these events have very few Black kids there. It's primarily normally Asian kids who come to these things.
Yeah.
Because we do these things
Yeah.
because we're a nonprofit. We do them at a very, very low cost. And so, they will invest in their kids. But the one that got me was, and I got into a horrible argument on Twitter and TikTok with teachers and parents because I talked about some of these kids are coming to engineering school because parents are like, you need to go become an engineer. Kids may not even have an affinity for it, but some parents are telling them the only degrees I pay for are doctors and engineers. So they end up in engineering
Mhm.
school and are completely unprepared. And so I have, I have an advice series on my YouTube channel. And the advice that day, which is what got me into the hot water, was I said, if you're going to go to college, especially in a STEM field, you need to start preparing in high school. A big part of doing that, because a lot of schools do not do this, is homework. You need to be doing things outside of
Mhm.
class, learning to critically think, learning to reflect and evaluate. Teachers were telling me how they're overpaid and underworked. They're not grading no homework. I said, I didn't say you had to grade the homework. You could have them take a nature walk and identify the different leaves on the trees. I don't care what they do, but they need to be doing something to critically evaluate and think about what they did at school that day. When I found out, when my daughter hit like sixth grade, that the school system said we believe in spending time with family and not doing homework, I went to Sam's and I bought her workbooks and I started giving her homework out of workbooks, because I don't care what the school system is going to do. I'm going to get her ready for her future. But a lot of people were telling me stuff, like Black people, that making kids do homework after school. Some have to go home and take care of their siblings. Some have to work an after school job. Some are in difficult socioeconomic situations. Parents may be on drugs, etc. I also had an after
Mhm.
school job in high school, but I also did homework when I got home at midnight from working fast food. But so this whole thing some people said the mindset of doing homework is teaching people working to work overtime for free. And what I was trying to tell them is the reason why that is not a worker bee mentality and it's a disconnect, because your education and your knowledge is an investment in yourself. So no, you are not paying the teacher by you going home to do homework and being a mindset of working for free, because you're investing in yourself. It don't hurt the teacher for you not to do your homework. It's like when students tell me, I didn't do this work because I thought it was stupid and I didn't want to do it. I got my degree. You're not hurting nobody, yourself by
Yeah,
not.
yeah,
But it's a mindset thing,
right.
because it's like culturally, what do you value? You invest in what you deem important.
Yes, absolutely. Because then my rebuttal would have been, well, if family time is so important, why are you doing athletics
Yeah.
after school?
Oh, I had a parent. This was actually a white woman who said this to me. She said, after school, my kid goes to football or he goes to soccer, and he comes home after practice and he has dinner, and after that he's tired, and I'm not going to make him do anything but go to bed. You could read a book to him at bedtime. But her rebuttal to me was, he don't have time to do homework because he does all his sports stuff after school. So we know where you invest your time, because why can't he do both?
Exactly.
He could do something on the weekend then.
And the same thing is like, when I hear people, and I don't want to be in anyone's pockets,
Mhm.
I try not to be in anyone's pocketbook, but oh, I can't afford a camp or something like that. But you're affording new cleats, you're affording new uniforms, you're affording all of this. And I'm not saying a kid should not do sports. Sports have, you know, the great assets to being an athlete. I'm not gonna poo-poo on sports, but put the same energy in
Yeah.
education. If you're gonna do that for sports, do it
Yeah.
for education. I don't understand why one and two ain't making three. Like, I don't get that, but
And I would
it's a
tell
lot
you,
of people who
people
feel
who
that
were
way.
hungry for knowledge will find a way. I get so many. I don't know how you reached out to me, but I get so many emails and DMs on social media from people in the Caribbean and Africa who are saying, can you just do a workshop for us online? Can you ship some robots to us and teach our kids here? I get so many requests for stuff like that I can't even satisfy all of them. That's actually during the pandemic why I started a business, because the sheer number of requests for free labor that I was getting became exhausting. So the people who do value this knowledge, they will do it. So we're over here in America talking about my child got to go to soccer and ain't doing no homework. And I got people in other countries going, can you please just fly over here and teach our kids for a summer? Because they understand the importance and the value of education. I like to say I did not grow up affluent, but my education was the great differentiator. My mom was a kindergarten teacher for 30 years.
Mm.
And so understanding that no matter how you grow up, it's the education that can be the differentiator. And people are missing out on that.
Yeah, I've been doing this podcast, I think 3 or 4, no, about 4 years. And actually a little bit over 4 years. It was before I had my son. But anyway, um, when I look at the statistics and the analytics, listening, my biggest listeners are in
Wow.
Germany. And I don't even know how that
Yeah.
is happening. But okay, I'm all for it. But I try to offer things now. Like, for example, this year I cultivated everything that I've been doing for the last couple of years in STEM, and I created a business called STEM Chat
Yeah.
Live. And what I'm doing is bringing STEM professionals virtually into classrooms. And I've already had a few, and I'm just like, yeah, I want to be able to offer this like monthly talks to your
Yes.
students,
I've also
right?
done that too.
And
Yeah.
but the schools don't want to pay for that, especially out here. The
Well,
schools don't
and
want to pay
that's
for
what
it.
I was telling you. I get a lot of requests, but I get a lot of free requests. And I mean, podcasts and stuff like
Yes.
that, I don't mind. But I've had organizations who've asked me to speak and tell me they don't have a budget for a speaker, but they want me to speak at an event where they're charging people to attend the event. So you're going to make people
Yeah.
pay to hear me speak, but you cannot pay me to speak. So things like that
Yep.
really, really bug me. But yes, I have done virtual classroom things in Japan, in Africa. I've done all that kind of stuff, and I don't mind but something I found is you get a lot of responses like, well, we're a nonprofit. Well, just because you're a nonprofit, I'm not a nonprofit. I have bills, right? So just because you're a nonprofit don't mean you shouldn't pay me. So that's one of the responses. And then
Yeah.
another one is when you're a Black person and you know that your mission is to
Mm.
diversify STEM and see more Black and brown kids and girls in STEM, people understand you're passionate about that. So then they start to tap into, well, why? This is what you said you want to do. Why are you not doing it for free?
Mhm.
But how much free do you think I can do? That's why I'm sick right now for overextending myself, doing too much for free, right? So
Yeah.
if
That's
my
mhm.
knowledge and my 26 years of education, that wasn't free. I had the student loans to prove it. Why should you not pay me for my intellectual property and for my knowledge? I give a lot away, but why do I have to give it all away? Right? It's respect people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I've been doing a podcast for years. I've talked to well over 100 people. I'm like, I have these people emails, phone numbers that I can bring to the school, but that's work on
Yeah.
my end to
Yeah.
set it up. Like, so I'm asking you guys to do like a monthly payment for me to do that. And I don't think that's even difficult. It's even cheaper if the district pays than one individual school pays. I'm like, but I get pushback. I also got pushback, by the way, because the person I was giving you, oh, we're not teaching that right now in the school, so we don't want to go down that level. What do you mean? Just because you're not teaching aerodynamics doesn't mean I shouldn't have somebody who specializes in aerodynamics talking to your
Because
kids.
you want
The
them
whole
to see
idea is
what
to
they can
open their
be and
mind.
where they could go. I had somebody recently tell me, we don't have a lot of funding. And if we pay you and no one shows up, then that's funding we wasted. And so, depending on who it is, I will sometimes say, I will do this one for you if we can negotiate me to sell books there, right? So I'm making money somehow. And then after the event, because they obviously didn't know who I was, a whole bunch of folks showed up. And she's just like, oh my God, if I had known, I could have paid you because we've never had this many people show up for an event before. Right. So
Mm,
that's why I think sometimes you just got to hold that line and be like, people will treat you the way you teach them to treat you, and they have to know your value. And if they do not, then sometimes I just have to say no. It's like they say,
yeah.
Oprah, people like Oprah Winfrey and Tyler Perry make decisions at the beginning of the year. Here are the 3 organizations I'm going to donate to, or here's the amount of money I'm going to donate to this year. Once I reach that threshold, that's it. So a lot of times I will tell people, I am so sorry. I have done all my my free events for the year.
I'm not mad at that. I
Yeah.
am not mad at that at all. And I really
Yeah.
appreciate that. Like, we've been talking for almost an
Yeah.
hour. And I feel like we can keep talking, but I don't want to
Thank
hold
you.
you all night. So I do want to give you the last few minutes
Yes.
to share anything that you might want to share, or if you can talk to your 10-year-old self, what would you tell her?
You are enough, and you are going to do amazing things, even more than you could ever think or ask God for. Um, I had a high school principal tell me one time, she said, one of the few Black women principals, I had a few Black women teachers. She said, I need you to walk around this hallway with your head up. Because I was very quiet and I was very shy. And so I would walk looking down at the floor a lot. She's like, I need you to keep your head up. And that's one of the few things a teacher ever said to me or principal said to me that has always stuck with me. And I think even at 10, it's because I never saw the complete value in who I was until later in life. People are always like, "Oh, you're really smart." I'm like, "I don't even know what that means." I still don't even think I'm that smart. I think I work hard. I think I am very
Mhm.
disciplined and I'm very focused. But when you just say and you attribute it to I'm just smart, I'm blessed. But when you say I'm just smart, then that takes a whole lot of people out of the running to do what I do because they don't feel they're smart. That's why I say you work hard, you dedicated,
Mm.
you're disciplined, you can get there as well. But you can absolutely support my work by going to my website, Noir Steminist, NOIRESTEMINIST.com. That means a Black person who promotes women in STEM and Black and brown people in STEM. You can also support me by
Mhm.
buying some of my children's books for all the kids in your life. And also, I have
Mhm.
romance novels, Black STEM romance novels. I also wanted to mention to you from something you said earlier, I do also use AI art to create Black STEM kids so that kids can see who they want to be. Because I know you had mentioned that earlier as well. So I have some STEM AI art based upon Black kids being
Mhm.
geologists and archaeologists and all these things that we just don't see Black kids being.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I don't even have anything else to say except for thank you
Thank you.
for taking your time this evening to be on my show. Thank you to everyone who were watching live. Normally I would take questions and comments, but I think this was just going so good. I don't think anyone had anything to say, which
Hey,
is
I've
fine with
been
me.
answering questions at
So,
work all day. I'm
yeah.
good.
Yeah, so amazing. I hope everyone has a good night. Thank you, Dr.
Thank
Berry. I
you.
really
Thank
appreciate it.